Webinar Wednesday to you. On this beautiful day, I am in North Carolina and it is a little bit chilly, but the sun is out. I am not complaining. I am happy to be here. And I am even happier to be joined by Chef Mark Phillips. So you can see that he is my co-host for today.
Hey, everyone.
Hello. So I am just going to do a couple of housekeeping things. I know that you are not here to hear from me. So just to get us started, thank you everybody for hopping in the chat. I love that y'all do this. I always tell our guests, they're a talkative bunch. They're going to hop in and start the conversation without us, and you never let me down. So shout out to Barb for getting things kicked off. Hey, Savannah, Dominica, Alan, Tarn, Susanna, Lee, Valerie. Hey, everybody. We've got people from Mexico, Colorado, Ireland. Wow. Raleigh, represent. I know. Hey, people are tuning in from all over the world to hear from you, Mark.
I see.
So, no pressure. Okay. All right. So I see that several of you have found the chat. Thank you for hopping in. Mark has been kind enough to offer to answer questions at the end. So if you want to drop them in, please do. We also have the Q&A only tab. So if you have a question, it'll be easier to sort if you drop it in there. So keep that in mind. I also just want to share with everyone that this will be recorded. We will post it on our YouTube channel. So if you have to join late or leave early, you will get the full recording. So don't worry about that. I think that that's all that I've got for housekeeping. So if you've written a cookbook, let us know. If you've never written a cookbook, let us know. Let us know how you're doing today. Just drop whatever you're feeling in. Positive vibes only, please. Okay. Yes. All right, so I am going to introduce Mark. I'm going to kick off with his bio, and then I'm going to hand it over to him. So without further ado, Chef Mark Southern Temptation Phillips is an artist who tantalizes both your taste buds and your visual senses. Mark is an artist who stands on a principle: art and food are one. Delighting a broad and eclectic range of patrons, Mark has been mixing, matching, and making delectable cuisine since early childhood. He has appeared on Atlanta & Company, showcasing his culinary techniques, and has been acknowledged in Dining Out Atlanta and Jezebel magazine. As a culinary enthusiast, Chef Mark continues to shine in what he does best: great food while staying fresh and on the cutting edge, expanding into healthy meals, gluten-free and paleo. Chef Mark believes it is key to be conscious of the food we put into our bodies, and he takes pride on providing culinary excitement that are reasonably raised. I really appreciate that last part. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here, and I will turn it over to you. Of course.
Hey everyone, this is Chef Mark here. I'm glad you guys joined me today. I'm excited to share with you guys everything that I've learned through this process of writing my cookbook. It was definitely a learning experience that was a labor of love, but a lot of information and a lot of passion behind it. So we're just going to get started, and I just condensed everything down to 8 tips that I learned while writing the book. Definitely several more that I could cover, but 8 tips that key that for anyone who hasn't written one or who's thinking about writing one. These are the topics that I have found most valuable in my process. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to go to the agenda. So basically what we're going to cover today is what's your target audience, or who is your target audience, and your voice. So what is it that you have to offer to say to the world about your love for food? The second is the 3 considerations: photos, budgets, and the table of contents in which you want to offer within your book. The third is recipes, how you compile them, development, and your testing. Testing is very important. I can't stress that enough. And we'll go over it more in that particular slide. Editing, story, and formatting, very important. Photography. A lot of us eat with our eyes, so having eye-popping photos is very important. So it's key to have good photography for those food items, so therefore they can highlight your love. The cover, which is very important as well. Printing and publishing, and then of course marketing, because you want to share with the world, as we have several people on the Live Now webinar that is from around the world. So let's get into our first one, the introduction of me. So I'm just going to give you a little brief overview of who I am. Chelsea gave a little bit, so I'm going to expand a little bit more. So as of now, I'm definitely an author. I can add that to my list of accomplishments, but also chef. I went to Johnson Wellman University in Miami, Florida. I got 2 degrees in culinary arts and food service management. So I did that, worked my way up the ranks from the prep cook, line cook, sous chef, head chef, and then executive chef. And then currently, I work for myself as a caterer and personal chef under the brand of Chef Southern Temptation. And that encompasses the personal chef, catering, food styling, which I work with different bloggers, photographers who I help style the food for other chefs or for magazine articles, whatever's needed for the object that we're doing on that day, and brand activations and restaurant consulting. Brand activations is a good way for you all, if you have different recipes, to use a company's product, their product in your recipes and highlight it, and it also gives you an additional exposure. So now that you have a brief little bit behind the scenes of who I am and background, we're going to jump into the 8 tips. All right. Who is your target audience and what is your concept? My editor, she gave me a key thing, because I would normally say my target audience is anyone who loves to cook. She did ask me to narrow it down, so therefore I can get more clear about it. So I had to ask myself some of the questions that was presented to me. How good of a cook are they? Am I looking for someone who has a little bit more expertise? Is it someone who doesn't know how to cook? And do they need to have a step-by-step details? It was important for me to figure that out. And I knew with being at home with Chef Mark Phillips, I didn't want anyone, or let me say I didn't want anyone. Anyone could use it, but I knew no one's going to have the trained skill level that I had. So I wanted to make it simple and easy, because something that I think is easy because I've been trained to do it is not as easy for the person at home cooking. So I definitely wanted to simplify it, but also challenge you to do more with your craft and step outside your comfort zone. So you want to know, how willing are they taking to risk? Would they want to do more with it? Are they going to do family recipes? So it's good to get clear about what is it that you want to share with the world based off of your love and your passion for food. So doing that and finding your voice will help you narrow down where you want to guide your book for people to follow along with you, because you don't want it to be all over the place, is what I found out. So you want to keep it concise and in order, so therefore it'll be easy to follow and people don't get intimidated behind it. So we're going to go into our next one, the concept and voice. As I explained before, the concept in my particular book, I did at home. So it's recipes that I wanted to share that my friends love to do, my family, and just food that I love to do for myself. So I decided to personalize it to my journey in life, seeing that it's my first cookbook. I wanted to take people on a journey from teaching them from the kitchen terminology, how to use knife cuts, some different measurements. So I want to give a little crash course in the beginning of reintroducing you to your kitchen. What is you use certain items for? And then I take you into soup and salad, appetizers and snacks, what's for dinner. I did a play on words. Instead of doing just soul food, because I'm originally from North Carolina, I called it coming from where I'm from. So therefore, it gave it a nice play on words, because the cookbook does not entail just soul food, but I wanted to pay homage to where I came from. And another play on words, instead of saying desserts, I did sweet spot. And then cocktails. Everyone's heard the terminology of it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So I was able to customize it to something that I love in my personality, and also give you those same key topics that you would want in there. And I also did a chapter special for vegan and vegetarians because it's something I do every year. So like I said, I wanted to bring people into my home and include that. So therefore, it gives it a little mini crash course, because a lot of people may think vegetarians or vegan food is just simple steamed broccoli or potatoes or sweet potatoes. I wanted to share my take on expanding it with different grains and different ways of using vegetables to make them more tasty and less intimidating. Your voice, just as I mentioned before, explaining it how I would like to bring people into my world. So my lawyer, she told me that I just couldn't copyright recipes. So I needed to tell a journey, and that set me back to the drawing board, because I wanted to, I love to cook, because I originally wrote this in beginning of COVID when we were all stuck at home. So I would do social media posts and people would ask me for recipes. So I decided to compile the different recipes at that time, because unfortunately we had more time than we all wanted. So I put that together, and I decided to tell the journey and tell people a little bit more about where I came from, why I love to cook, how to stay creative during that time frame. Because as any of you chefs may know, or at home wives or families or single individuals trying to be creative constantly with food, it can be quite intimidating. So I wanted to share my passion with that and just make it more fun and festive because we had more time than we wanted. So that added to my voice in the book. And I talk about that in the preface, how it got me to that point, because a lot of us were lost in time with what to do at that time frame because we either were not working or doing repetitive work. So I just chose to pour my energy into something where I probably may have not have had time to do before. So I wanted to share it in this format. All right, the three considerations: photos, budget, and table of contents. Photography is very important. Cookbooks, like I said, we're visual people, so people want to see the outcome of what you described. You can be as detailed or make as many written verbal steps, but seeing the end result is very important. I love photography and I love the art. So for me, fortunately, I was able to lend that into the food and then placement and styling. If that's not your strong suit, I definitely recommend working with someone to help you with that one because, like I said, a lot of us eat with our eyes. So therefore, we would want to make the photos eye-popping. Budget. Going into this project, I really didn't have a set budget because I didn't know what to expect. I know I wanted the different editors, photography, printing, formatting of the book. So researching the cost, depending on the type of book you're looking for, it can go anywhere from, on the very, very low end, $1,500 to the more expensive end up to 10 to 12,000. But that just depends on your budget, what you're trying to look for, the range. So I would say definitely do some research on budgeting and using different avenues. For example, I mentioned in the slide, I used Fiverr. If you haven't heard of it, I definitely recommend you checking it out. It's an app that you can download on your phone or your computer, and it's a source where you can do food photography editors, recipe editors, just about anything you're looking for, marketing. It offers a lot of different sources for you can cut your cost, but also get good quality because the different type of people on that platform are from all over the world. So therefore, it can be tailored to your budget. I would say try to get as clear as possible. So therefore, you can work with the designer or the editor in a clear fashion as much as possible. The table of contents is the flow of your book. It's usually the first or second pages that anyone would open up and read your book. So that one is going to get you or get the reader the eye catching of what it's going to be about, what to expect. Are they interested? Is it something that they can do? Is it attainable? And just give them a feel of what they're expecting what they're expecting throughout your book. I will say the table of contents is the order of it. And from there, you can tell a story and it'll help you get your recipes in order by how many you want per chapter and what you want to include as a part of your voice. Budget. So with the budget, again, like I said, you have your recipe testing. So you have to factor in your food cost to test the recipes. So that is within itself, especially with prices of food these days. You got to keep that in consideration because that comes out of your own pocket. Or if you have a set amount of budget you're going to put together for it, all of that comes out of that. Your spices, your food, the plating, depending on if you're doing different shoots, the photographer, if you're going to hire a photographer, the editing. The editors, like I said, I used two different ones, so that was two different costs. Print and publishing through Lulu, you're going to have to get your proof copies, changes, your styling, lighting, shoot days if you're doing it on set, if you're not doing it at home. So all of those things add up, so you have to keep those in mind, again, depending on the type of cookbook you want to offer to the world. Recipes. So when you're doing your recipes, I'm sure like many of you have recipes that you've had over time or some that you can do repetitive without writing them down. It is very important to compile the recipes. So therefore you can get a list of how many you need, how many you already have. Do you need to add some more? If you got 10 for this chapter, do you need to add 5 more to the other one? Therefore, you can keep an even balance of recipes per chapter. So compiling them all, it might take some time. but it's okay. It's okay to take some time to do this because you want to brainstorm where you want to go from, what part you want to start, where you want to finish, how many you want to include. So it's okay to compile them, but do them concise. And I'm the old pen and paper type person, but technology has definitely allowed where you can keep notes on your computer or your phone. Recipe development. So with this process, this helps flush out your voice and what you're going to show in the book. Um, so the development of it is how many you want to do, where you want to flow with it. Is it cohesive with everything that's already in the book? Um, so you want to see where it's going to flow from that. And therefore, as the development takes place, you're going to test out your recipes. That is very important. Just because you can reproduce the recipe over and over again yourself, you have to simplify it for your reader. And by testing it with the measurements, how many scales, spoons, exact liquid versus dry measurements, you want to make sure you get that as clear as possible, because what you don't want to do is someone who finally gets your cookbook, they measure it based off of what you put in there, but it doesn't turn out or taste the way that you created. So it's important to test your recipes over and over again. So therefore you have your exact measurements. And a good thing to do is have people in your family or friends test them for you. Excuse me. That way they can tell you what it's like, or you can see where you can make some changes in testing your recipes, because it may be your signature dish, but you want to have someone create it just as much, and if not the exact same way that you do it. Editing, story, and formatting. So as I mentioned before, I used two different editors. My first editor was a recipe editor that I found on Fiverr. He was based in the UK, but he had an extensive background on the measurement, where it's being Celsius and Fahrenheit, the metric system. So he was able to format it so therefore it can be read throughout the world. And I also put that in the measurements at the beginning of my chapter. So if someone here in the US uses a certain measurement, you can also use it in the UK to convert it. And he was able to streamline it, put it in the flow that I wanted to do. Even though I have a general idea of how to put a recipe together, he was able to polish it and keep it cohesive. Because starting the recipe book in 2020 and finishing it at the end of 2021, you start in one place, but your verbiage and the way you write it may change over time. So it's good to have someone to keep your voice cohesive, and therefore it doesn't sound like your recipes are all over the place. My second editor is a story editor. I chose this person by referral. She was referred to me by another author, not from the same lane of cookbooks, but just from the same aspect of being able to hold my voice to where it is. I didn't want my voice to be too polished and technical. So therefore, I wanted to keep the laughter in it, or certain ways that I would say something that may not be traditional. So having that story editor help keep my voice, but also help with the grammar, because I can spell, but I would definitely mess over some words sometimes. So it's always good to have a second set of eyes to go over that with you. And if you can't afford, or it's not in your budget to do an editor, it's always good to lean on the people around you. So if you have anyone who's teaches or does anything around work with editing or in that field of verbiage, it would be good to pass it on to them to get a second set of eyes, if not third or fourth, because you'll stare at it constantly. But it's important to get other people, because they're going to catch something that you may not catch after looking at your book over and over again. Story, as I've mentioned before, what your voice is, how do you want to translate it to other people, and where do you want your reader to go on the journey with you? So get clear about that as much as possible, and who's your target audience. The formatting. Again, I used Fiverr for this one as well. I hired a gentleman to format my book. Like most of us, will start it in a Word format, but he was able to format it in the flow where it was to be concise and cohesive. So I definitely recommend you hiring someone to do that. There are, I guess you say, apps that you can have or use online if you choose to go about yourself. I didn't use them myself, so I don't have any recommendations on that aspect, because I knew I wanted my cookbook to flow a certain way in a certain style. I went to Barnes& Noble and sat and went through, I would say, anywhere from 50 to 100 books to look and see and flow how I wanted my cookbook to be. So therefore, I had notes to give to my formatter in the sense of the layout of the book. All right, photography. As I mentioned before, this is very important. These first 4 photos that you're seeing here in front of you are from 3 different photo shoots. The first 2 are from the first photographer I worked with in person. The third photo that you're seeing there is me styling the photos with another photographer to get the achievement that I wanted for. And the last one is the cocktails from the 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock somewhere chapter. And therefore, I just wanted the cohesive and my own finishing touches on it because I love photography and I love food. So having an eye for those details, lighting, and angles are the big keywords for photography. So a study that was done by Matt Bites indicated that most readers, especially of cookbooks, 50% of them like visuals. The other 33%, they can just deal with the recipes as is without visuals, but I prefer to have photography to go along with each of the recipes. So therefore, if you're creating at home, they'll have an outlook of what it's supposed to look like. Even if it's not 100%, at least they know what exactly it's supposed to be close to. I styled 80% of the photographs in my cookbook, again, because it's something I love to do and I've studied it. If this is not your forte, I would definitely recommend bringing in someone on board to help you with this because it's very important. You want it to look as polished and professional as possible, but understanding if it's not your skill or your strong suit, it's okay to reach out to someone and ask for help. The other 20%, I hired a photographer. I brought someone in to help do the styling when I was behind the camera. So therefore, when I was in front of the camera, it can be exactly the eye that I was looking for. So it's very imperative that you do that with mouth-watering photos because, again, we eat with our eyes. Book cover design. So this is very important. This is the image that you're seeing in front of me or front of you all is the cover of my cookbook. I probably took about 30 different photos trying to decide which one you want to use, whether you're using yourself on the cover, your signature dish that entails everything that's in the book. That's very important to trying to decide what it is. It's really up to you and where you want the direction of your book to go. Because I went the self-publishing route with Lulu, Amazon and Barnes & Noble doesn't have a distinctive category where they'll know which one is more higher end, which one is more less. So you have to kind of do the work for yourself to get it exactly where you want it to be. So it's important to make that standout image be as professional and as beautiful as possible. So like I said, I hired someone to do that for me. But the key of what I wanted to look for, I had an idea of what I wanted. Now, depending on what type of cover you want, there's usually 3 main ones that 3 main photos that everyone can use. So the first one is a single image of what the book. So if you're doing all desserts or all cocktails or all appetizers, it's imperative to choose an image that best represents what they're going to get inside of that book. The second option is a hero shot. I'd learned that from a photographer who actually did Uber Eats for a consulting restaurant that I did. She did a set of all the different restaurants that I designed for the menu. And the hero shot included all the main dishes, some appetizers. So it gave an overall view of what the book, or in this case, the restaurant is going to include. So therefore, the guest or the reader can get an idea of what they expect without thumbing through the pages. Because going on any bookstore or online, the first view you get is the cover. So I decided to do a combination of the 2 of those. I wanted myself on the cover in addition to some of the items that the guest or the reader would be able to enjoy while they're going through the cookbook. So a good combination may work for you, or just the food if you don't want to be a part of it and just be in the inside. It's really a personal preference, but it's great to showcase who you are and what the reader is about to enjoy. Printing and publishing. So I'll say I definitely picked Chelsea's brain a lot during this process because it was very new to me. So I had a lot of questions. I even signed up for their publishing online class as well, just to educate myself. This was a new journey for me, so I wanted to learn as much as possible during the process. So I did the online class. I did a lot of reading, Googling, searching, just so I can know the proper way and the legal way to get everything taken care of. So once your book is all set in a Word format and you have your photos, which is usually in 2 different files, you will hire your formatter to put it together for you. You will send it over. Again, I used Fiverr for this one as well. And I sent the files over, and it's going to take a lot of back and forth going through this process. But once you have everything together, you can submit it, and they can put it in what I like to call the pretty format, or the font, the layout of everything. So it's important to have that person that you work with hand in hand to get it exactly like you want it to. And with Lulu, you can do spiral bound, hardcover, or paperback. So for my particular book, I decided to do print on demand. Having limited storage space, Lulu is a great source for if I don't want to house so many in-house, I can direct people directly to the website of my store, and they can just purchase the book directly and it'll be shipped to them. So print on demand is definitely a really good option for those of us who have limited space or have other jobs where we can't put 100% focus on our book and shipping it out. Big lesson that I learned towards the end of my cookbook writing process is the copywriting. I knew I needed it based off of my lawyer who shared the information with me. She had already did previous contracts with me outside of the book realm. But learning this, I realized I did everything for the hardcover and got my ISBN for that. And as I'm ready to go and launch, I was like, okay, I want to offer paperback for those people who want more of a cost-effective book, but they still wanted it. I did not realize I needed a second ISBN. So if you're going to go that route, tip, you're going to need 2 of them, therefore, when you're registered. So everything else can be the same in the inside, but that barcode, if you don't know what ISBN, I'm sorry, I'm assuming everyone knows what that is the barcode on the back of your book. This here. So you'll need 2 of these if you do one separate. If not, you just need 1 of them. So it's important to have it. Lulu offers that service if you want to do it directly through them. I decided to get my own, but it's completely up to you. But it is important to have that because you can't do your global distribution on certain levels without that particular ISBN. Marketing. So I did the what you call lead up marketing. I brought everyone through the process with me via social media. It's definitely an important tool that you have to use, or you don't have to, but I found it very beneficial. Behind the scenes photography, when I got the proof copy emailed to me, printed version in Word finally in my hands, I basically brought people along on the journey with me. So therefore, they have something to look forward to just as much as you have something to look forward to. So it's important to promote as much as possible. Links, pop-ups, online invites, ads. Canva is another wonderful app that you can use to create promotional tools as well. It'll look professional, but it gives you all the flow and steps without you actually have to creating it directly for yourself and by yourself. So definitely use all types of online resources to promote your cookbook the best way you know how to. If not, lean on to other people that have various social media managers. You can use it from Facebook. They have a Facebook business page. Instagram, you can promote via paid promotions as well. Local bookstores, pop-up events, as I mentioned before. Promote is very important because you may have a group of audience that you have on a regular basis, but it's important to get your book in front of other people who may not have ever come across your path. So it's okay to be selective, but it's also you got to stretch outside of your normal market, which is something I learned, but it was a good tool, and I'm glad I did, and I'm going to continue to do, because you got to continue to promote your book way after the launch. It can be nerve-wracking leading up to the launch of your cookbook, but it doesn't stop there, because we have the attention span that is very small, so you have to stay in front of people's faces in order to get it where you want it to go. Another big thing that I was advised by another author is don't expect to get rich unless you have a great following, or you're a great social media presence, or a lot of celebrity style chefs, or been on TV before, something where you have that pre-marketing. Don't really expect to get rich, but it shouldn't stop you, especially if it is a passion of yours, like it is of mine. Don't stop, keep going for it, but it takes active promotion. I released my cookbook on November the 15th, but I think I promoted anywhere from 3 to 6 months prior, again, with those details of the photo shoot, the behind the scenes, sneak peeks. All of those things keep everyone engaged and excited about what's going to come, because they feel like they're part of the journey. People want to get a part of you. They want to know you. They want to be in your world. And remember to enjoy it. That's the biggest thing I can say, even though it may be tedious, because my book is a lot extensive than I anticipated, but I got wrapped up in enjoying the process of creating, teaching, and sharing. So it is very imperative to enjoy the process. Life happens. So of course you can't write every day, or shoot every day, or write every recipes every day. But if you set a goal for yourself and leave it, a hard goal, but leave room for life, it is important to do that as well. And enjoy writing, enjoy creating, enjoy navigating, ask questions. Like I said, Fiverr is a good resource for trying to get navigation on formatting, layout, photo editing. If you don't know someone in your local city, I definitely recommend using all the useful tools that we have online. So happy cooking, happy writing, and any questions?
All right, Mark, thank you so much. For anyone who is lucky enough to be tuned in right now and who will watch this was a master class on how to make a cookbook. I knew that the process for creating a cookbook mirrored the process for making any book, but I'm really blown away by how much insight you were able to offer. And I really just kind of want to underline a couple points that you made before we hop into questions. So thank you. I mean, I love how holistically you approach this. So with your target audience, which we always talk about at Lulu, but testing the recipes, which is something that for some reason I'd never thought about. But obviously, with any book that you write, you want to have a benefit. You have something in mind that you're hoping people get from it. But what I never thought about was like, oh, when you write a cookbook, there's literally a step-by-step process, and there's something that should be replicable on the other end. So I love that, and having your friends and family test it out. I mean, who's going to be more honest than friends and family when it comes to something like that?
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you for those tips. And so one thing I wanted to ask you, I know you did this, but I know that when you launched, you did a book signing, and I know that just across the spectrum of publishing, so that can be hit or miss. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like for you? And is that something you would recommend to other cookbook authors?
So my book signing, it was planned out for about a month and a half because I had to get the proof copy first. So you got to make sure whatever date you're promoting as much as possible, get your proof, see if there's any changes, the formatting, the layout. Start there first before you start promoting, because there could be some hiccups that take place, and trying to get that book in time for the launch is very important, because that window, especially when I launched it around holiday season, is tricky around that time frame. But I do recommend doing a launch because it allows whoever your readers are to get a touch and feel on who you are going to be showcasing your talents with. But promoting that and using various sources, I decided to promote at a restaurant that I had a consulting relationship with. So therefore, even though I was not the executive chef of them, we had a great relationship, and they allowed me to use the space. So I would definitely say to cut costs or watching your budget, tap into resources, whether it's another bookstore. Think of Williams Sonoma, because I've done some work with them as well. So, or depending on what is the Cook's Warehouse, just partner with anyone that you know that is in your lane, because you don't want to do a launch or pop up somewhere that really has no correlation to what you're doing. So it's important to kind of have two. And I did samples at my signing as well. So it's a twofold. So you get to talk and sign the book, but you also get to taste what you're going to create later on. So I did a double fold on that. So I thought it was important for me because it allows some of the people who follow me on social media, who may not know me personally or can hire me for my catering or chef services, they got to come out and engage and build a rapport with me. So I think that's important. I do recommend it.
Yes, thank you for that insight. All right, let's hop over to the Q&A. So go ahead and drop your questions in. Thank you. I see a lot of y'all have already done that. So go ahead and drop them in so that Chef Mark can give you his insights. All right, so our first question is from JF. My first cookbook did not have photos, but essential recipes for a particular group of folks and a lot of chatty commentary. It's well done. As I do my second, are photos imperative, or do you have thoughts on that?
I believe they're imperative because of the time we're in now. If you think about Instagram or Facebook, everyone is picture or reels conscious. Everything is there, so people want to see. Yes, we love to read, but having, let's say, 50% of the book with photos in it is great. If you feel like your lane is more technical and you want people to read, it's not necessary, but I do find from just the feedback, people seeing the photos to go along with the recipe has probably been one of the biggest responses that I've got. So I would say personally, I recommend it, but you don't have to have a recipe, an image for every single recipe.
Yes, and I'm just dropping in a link to your Instagram so that people can kind of see how that you're presenting your recipes. And I know you talked a lot about social media today, but yeah, I mean, I'm a fan, but I also think, you know, when you talked about your target audience and how familiar are they with cooking? How comfortable are they with cooking? I mean, someone who has a culinary background may not need photos, but for somebody like me, I very much need to know what that end product is supposed to look like. So I think that you had such great insight on finding that target audience. So just wanted to remind JF of that, and thank you for that question. All right. And Susanna, the PowerPoint will be available. We will share this presentation on our YouTube channel, so you can check it out there and rewatch it at your leisure. Okay, Barbara is asking, is there a fine line between too much talking and not enough recipe? I'm one of those who usually get really annoyed when I have to scroll down forever to get to a recipe.
It can be. It just really depends on the personality of the chef. Some people love a chef that just talks just a secondary. I like to do a happy medium because the attention span for most of us, we want to get it there, get it done, have your mise en place or your ingredients together. So in mine, I gave short stories at the beginning of the chapter, except the educational chapters. They're more extensive because I wanted you to learn something. But once you get to the recipes, most of them are fairly simple because I wanted to use ingredients that people have in their home, but I also wanted them to go out and shop and get into our world. But most of the steps are simple, direct. You want to keep it, the language in the cookbook, not as technical as if you were classically trained or something like that, because most people at home may not know, like I said, mirepoix. Just chop your vegetables. And
no idea what that is.
Yes. So I do explain it in the book, so in mine, you'll know what it is. But for other people, just your key ingredients, chop them up and put them in a bowl. It depends on your audience. If you want them a little, to come into your world, just simplify is the best way I can say it.
Yes, that is great advice. All right, and Susanna is asking, how long does the printing take after the designer is done with it? So can you talk to us a little bit about your timeline from the designer finishing to kind of getting that first proof copy in hand?
So it's a lot of back and forth. It depends on how much of a clear vision you have for your book. A lot of back and forth because I was very particular about placement, font, the style of font, where it's going to be, the type of layout, because my designer gave me the very first one because they were just shooting at options. It was very, I'm going to say, cartoonish for the lack of better words, and it's nothing wrong with anyone who likes that style, but I wanted mine to look more polished and cohesive to any cookbook that you see anywhere else. So it was a lot of back and forth, and I'll say that probably that process was definitely 2 to 3 months within itself. And I only say that because they had a life and I still had to work. So unless this is your full dedication and that's their full dedication, it's going to take some time because it's not an overnight process, but it is a lot of back and forth changes, editing. Do you want it to sound like this? Do you want to change it like this? Do you want the format to be this way or that way? So it can take a 2 to 3 month process. That's how long it took me, how long it did take me. And then once I finally got the digital version that I could submit to Lulu, that probably took another 2 to 3 weeks because of the changes and then getting the proof to me. So I would say give yourself anywhere from, on the very short end, if you got somebody that's working hand in hand with you, 2 months once you get to that particular stage. But on a high end, I'll say 4.
And when you were creating your cookbook, did you have November in mind as you knew that was when you wanted to launch? So you were able to kind of work back from there? Or as you were kind of nearing the end of the process, were you like, okay, now I can plan for a November launch date?
November was my goal date. Once I had, I'm a numbers person or a spiritual person in that aspect. I knew 11:11 and 11:15 was the numbers I wanted. That worked in 2 ways for me. It gave me a crunch time to get what I needed to get done and not make excuses because I can procrastinate. I'm definitely like anyone else. You could choose to write or you can choose to eat the food. So, you have to balance those things out. But I had a hard date because it kept me disciplined at the same time and to get things done, get things accomplished. Because if you don't give yourself some form of a hard deadline, it could be next year. I'll do it in 3 months, or I'll write it a couple pages next week. It took me 2.5 years. But a part of that in the beginning was COVID, and some days I wanted to write, some days I didn't, but it also gave me more time that I wanted. So I was able to get everything done in a decisive detail that I wanted. So yeah, give yourself some time, but give yourself a goal date too as well. So therefore it doesn't keep getting prolonged. And I use people around me as accountability partners. So if people would constantly ask me about my book, what's the process? So that works 2 ways of thank you for checking on me, but at the same time, please stop asking me. But it got me closer to my goal date because I needed that. I know what works for me and I needed to share what my journey is. So therefore people can keep me accountable for it.
Oh, so those are great tips. And I never really thought that as you're making a cookbook and you're testing recipes, that's just further distraction of like, oh, should I just sit down and eat this delicious meal that I made, or should I go write notes on the process?
Yeah.
So I don't know how often I would win that battle of not sitting down to just eat, but I'm glad that you got through it. All right. So thank you for that question. The next one is from Tarn. So do you have any input on a paper book or a hard copy book versus an ebook?
I did all 3. Just because I wanted anyone, whatever format they want to do, they can get it. But hard copy is my favorite personally because it's kind of like a signature in the culinary world to have a hardcover, but paperback also gives you that flexibility on a book stand. So it really depends on how common you think of the reader is going to use it. So therefore, if they're going to use a paperback, you got to think about the gloss versus matte, wiping off the pages, how personal preference versus usage is really up to you. But I started off with hardcover, but I realized with the price point, some people may still want the book. So I need to give them paperback. And then ebook, if you're more of an electronic person and you want to be able to pull up your phone while you're in the grocery store shopping, you got to have that method as well. So I offered all 3. It just really depends on your preference, but I wanted my audience to get it any way they wanted to. You can have it.
I think that's the best way to answer that. All right. And so Michelle's asking a little bit of a technical question, so I'll just kind of answer this from Lulu. But Michelle is asking, is there a way to submit as a PDF? Yes, at Lulu. For your files, as you create your book, we only accept PDF files because that causes less shifting and moving around with the format. So you are all set there. Okay. And Lee is asking, what are your recommendations about an index at the back of the book?
So the index, that was probably one of the very last steps in the formatting because, some of the pages change. Let's say I reduced the image on one recipe, it may bring the page back. So that is going to be a very last step that you do. And when starting this process, I thought it would be in the beginning, but as working with my formatter, I realized, okay, just be patient. I agree with everything. And he finished it for me. And that probably took a day or two once with all the back and forth he had by that time, exactly where it needs to be. So yes, I say index in the back because someone may just want to go directly to a particular recipe, give it to them so they can just go to it and then go to that page number.
Perfect. All right. And Suzanne is asking, my release is for late October, early November. When should it go to the printer?
Depending on your publishing date, if that's okay to you, you can, if you want it to be stamped at a certain time, that comes into play as well. But if that's not important for you, I would say at least 30 to 45 days before, in case there's some hiccups, any changes, because you're going to take anywhere from, I think the Lulu offers on the short end, 8 or 9 days to 15 to get your first copy. So you have to keep that in mind. And with today's packaging, you got to add an extra few days in there. So 45 to be on the safe side, 30 at the minimum.
Yeah, God, that's such great advice, and so great to hear from someone who actually went through it. That's such a good buffer to give yourself, because like you said, you're going to get it. And unfortunately, there's going to be something that you probably want to change or that you may have overlooked, or you just want to give yourself some breathing room. So
yes, for sure.
Awesome. All right. And Lillian is asking, what was your pricing working through Lulu? So I don't know what you want to speak to specifics here. I will say, Lillian, if you go to lulu.com/pricing, you can put in your specifications of the book you're hoping to create, and you can get a per unit cost. But Mark, I don't know what you want to speak to in regards to budget, or what your experience was, or how you want to
well, I would say Lulu has the price calculator. So once you put in all your specs and everything in there, you can see what your printing cost or what it's going to cost you to produce the book. Then it's just how much you want to sell it for, because I did research on the average cookbook cost, where I wanted to keep it in. So depending on what you want to do, if you did spiral, you're going to be a lot less than what I would spend on a hardcover. So pricing varies based off of audience and the style of content that you have in your book. I offer a lot in my cookbook, so therefore I knew I could charge at a certain price point, because you were not just getting just recipes. I gave you knowledge, technique, terminology, wine education. So I gave you a lot more, and comparing that to other books in Barnes and Nobles or other authors, you'll see where your book falls on that scale of pricing.
Yeah, basically a culinary education in Chef Mark's book. So, and I also want to highlight, so one of the things that he mentioned was just going to Barnes and Noble. And if you want to make a cookbook, read cookbooks. So some of the questions that are being asked, just like for publishing any book, look at others that you like and see the ones that are doing well and selling well, or even the ones that you don't like and why. And I think that really helped your process. And I thought it was so valuable to be able to give, even though you're working with formatters or cover designers and editors, you knew what you were looking for and you were able to help them get there. So I think that collaborative process is super helpful and great advice. All right. And Barbara's asking, when it comes to photos in your book, how much room do you suggest giving them? A thumbnail, half a page? What are your recommendations there?
Well, with mine, I let the designer present his creativity to me, and then I made alterations to it. So some of my images cover a full page, some are half of the page, and some are thumbnails. I did a combination depending on what the recipe was, but I'll say at least 60% of my images are half a page, because like I said, my passion for food styling and putting the image together, I wanted to showcase that with the recipe. So the recipe may be on one side and the image will be on the other, or half and half, half top and bottom. It just really depends on the formatter and how they lay it out. But I like photos, so half of the pages included.
Yes. I mean, again, I think, as you mentioned, target audience, but I'm a huge fan of looking at the photos as well. So I think that can add so much and elevate your book. So great advice there. All right. And let's see. So Suzanne is asking, are there cookbook sizes that customers prefer over other sizes? And she's referring to the physical size or trim size of the book.
The physical size, a typical, I would say 8x11, that's not going to be the exact size of your book. But if you go think of a magazine, think of a books on shelves, those are the sizes that I found most common. Now you can do something a little bit smaller, like this little notepad I'm holding up here, but you see how size of my hand holding it. It's, if you want to keep it quick and concise, then I would say go with something like that. If it's just a family recipes or something quick go to, those are good for on the go. But if it's more of a full size cookbook, I would say keep it in that range. And not, if not, I think there's a 10 by 10, which is more of a square. I could be wrong on that size, but that's another good size as well. So I say that anywhere between 8.5 by 11 or the 10 by 10, somewhere around there, average size.
Yeah, that's great advice. And again, I mean, when you are doing your research like Mark did, looking at the sizes that you like and trying to follow in those footsteps and seeing what you can do to recreate that. So I'm going to do a last call for questions. So go ahead and get those in before we have to cut Mark loose to go on to his next culinary adventure. But Michelle is asking, is there a maximum number of pages? So do you have any advice on kind of what page count you should be looking for, or does that just depend on, your theme and what recipes you have to include?
It's both the theme and what you're looking for. Again, in my research, I saw on average at minimum for a good cohesive cookbook, 150 was probably the minimum, and I've seen everything up to 375. Depending on what you're going to include in your cookbook, you don't have to go that high if it's just something you want to keep it simple or a focused market. Let's say like vegetarian, it's all that. You may not need 150 pages. You may need 50, but when you're thinking of that, a portion of those pages is just the recipe, and the other pages are the image. So it may sound like a lot, but you may have just 50 recipes, but the other 50 is the images that show along with that. So you got to keep that in mind, that the number may sound high, but there are also images that you're including in that as well. So you may want 50 pages of written and 50 pages of visual.
Great advice. All right. So, Julie, your question kind of leads me into something I wanted to include before we hop off. So, if you can see the pinned message I just added, all of you are in for a treat. If you would like to pick up Chef Mark's book, if you would like to have your own culinary education and go through some of the things he's talked about and see the proof in the print, then you can use the code ChefMark15 for 15% off Chef Mark's cookbook. I will go ahead and drop the link to that into the chat here. So go ahead and check that out. All right. And also, I will add one more thing and then go one last check for questions. So luckily for all of you today, we are doing a giveaway with Chef Mark. So I'm going to drop the Instagram post in here. If you are interested in signing up for a chance to win a copy of Chef Mark's book, then here is the information there. You can go over to his Instagram and check that out. However, if you are not one of the lucky chosen winners, then you can use that code for 15% off of his hardcover or paperback book. As he said, he did all the sizes, very considerate for his audience. So check that out. All right. And Julie was asking about marketing. So do you get a direct link from Lulu? And also, can you offer coupons or discounted rates for specific audiences? So I know that, so Chef Mark is selling his book through Lulu.com. So we usually have coupons and things like that that are in market. But Chef Mark, do you want to talk at all about how you're selling or using your direct link for marketing, or any final tips for us?
Yes. I have my own website, which I've added my book to, and I have the option to add discount codes on there as well. So in addition to Lulu, I do the discount codes for special occasions there directly through Lulu. But if you get it through my direct website, where I ship it out, I do offer discounts for special pop-up events, or if I'm doing a cookbook launch and wine tasting event, I'll offer the guests a certain percentage off just for partaking or coming to the event, or if I'm doing a promo online. So yes, I do offer options because, like I said, you got your launch out of your book, but you're going to have to keep getting it out there more and more. So discounts are intriguing to people to want them to purchase more.
True. Very true. And so Lillian is asking, do you do signed copies?
Yes. So if directly through my website, if you do the purchasing there of southerntemptation.com, I ship those out directly. So they come from Lulu to me, to you, basically. And I'll sign them and I'll ship them out to you directly.
All right. And I am going to drop a link for your website in here as well. And Mark, before we sign off, tell everyone where to find you, the best way to connect with you, if they need to hire you for an event, if they want to get in touch for a signed copy, drop your website in there, but any other social media info you want to share before we go.
Yes. So if on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, it is at Chef Southern Temp, TEMP. You can find me there. If you have more questions, you could email me at info@southerntemptations.com, no S on the end, or you can send me a direct message in Facebook or Instagram, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I'm available. And catering services, personal chef, and styling, all those platforms you can reach me at as well.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I am so impressed and blown away. If I feel like I need to get your book, I was going to say if I could cook, I'd make a cookbook, but I guess you have to start at the beginning. So I guess ordering your cookbook will be my first step in
Yes.
the journey. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who attended. Please go to our YouTube channel if you want to rewatch, get the tips. We have the code Chef Mark 15 for 15% off Mark's cookbooks. Follow him on Instagram.
Yes.
His stuff is delicious. I hope my boss isn't watching this because I spend way too much time looking at his Instagram and the dishes he is creating. He's a fantastic chef and a fantastic cookbook author as well. So Mark, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you,
us.
everyone. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So go follow Mark, interact with him however you can. I hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday, and we will see you next time. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.